Hello, it's John Heaton, and a belated Happy New Year to everyone. And I'm back and going to start the new year reviewing this album from Paul McCartney and Wings, Red Rose Speedway. And I have to say, I'm feeling a little bit apprehensive about this because it seems like most of the world has either forgotten this album or dismissed it. So I might sound like a lone voice against the tide of public opinion or whatever, but I'm really fond of this album, and I know a few people out there in the vinyl community are also fond of it, so I'm not completely alone. Came out in May 1973 and was the follow-up to Wings Wildlife, which was from December 71, which hadn't done terribly well commercially. So first thing Paul did was make sure his picture was on the cover, and then this album was credited to actually I thought it was credited to Paul McCartney and Wings, but actually on the sleeve it just says Red Rose Speedway, and on the spine it just says Wings. Inside it says Paul McCartney and Wings. I always thought it was credited to Paul McCartney and Wings. Anyway, this is got several things interesting about this album. It was the last Paul album that John Lennon said he listened to, which I don't believe, by the way, because he's commented on Band on the Run for one publicly. But probably the last album he he listened to closely, trying to see if there was any hidden meaning in any of the tracks. Relations were on the mend by the time this album came out in early May 1973, and again later on this year, the Ringo album would feature contributions from all three other solo Beatles. And Paul would meet up with John and become relatively friendly again. So that's the backdrop to the album. Got some input here from my friend Dave Costello. We were hoping to do a joint video for this because I know he's got quite a lot to say about this album, but here's what he said to me by email today. It's a really interesting bridge between Wildlife, brackets big barn bed noodling, close brackets, and the slicker Band on the Run, getting more structured and confident, grander ideas, almost the point where McCartney refines his Beatles sensibilities again and dares to think big again. Well, nice input, Dave. I think he is becoming more ambitious here, concept-wise, and that would culminate in Band on the Run later in the same year. It doesn't always work on this album. Rolling Stone, interestingly, after completely murdering the Ram album, gave it a kind of pretty positive review. I printed it out today and I had a read through. It's not singing its praises by any means, but it finishes off by saying, this is Rolling Stone here, despite expected hits and misses, I find Red Rose Speedway to be the most overall heartening McCartney product given us since the demise of the Beatles. After much experimentation with how best to present himself, Paul has apparently begun a process of settling down, of working within a band framework that looks to remain stable for at least the next vehicular period. Okay, so that's a lot better than the review they gave Ram. I've got the sheet music here, by the way, which actually has a couple of extra tracks, The Mess, which was a B-side, and Country Dreamer, which was a B-side recorded during the same sessions. And those tracks fit pretty well within the Red Rose Speedway album as extra tracks, unlike the CD, which I think includes the Hi 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 single, which doesn't really fit on this album, and some people complain that they didn't put that single on this album, but at the time none of the Beatles were putting their singles on the albums because they didn't want to make the fans get a song twice. Anyway, I've gone on a bit here. So This album, when it came out, was a #1 hit in America, and it was top 5 in the UK, and it came out about a month before George's Material World album. And the contrast couldn't really have been greater, because George's album, they're both very strong, very nice to listen to, but they're both very different in mood. George's album is very solemn and serious lyrically. This one is altogether more fun. I think Rockboy 680 described this album as. It's more lightweight, sure, but it's accessible. And after all the heavyweight stuff which had been coming out in the early 70s, it was quite nice to have a bit of melodic McCartney on the market. And John Lennon said as much as well in an interview at the time. So, but what I would say is, if you're not a fan of Paul McCartney as a solo artist, then don't go near this album, because you're not going to like it. So you have to like Paul before you can even approach his early solo work. And if you are a fan of his melodies and you don't take the lyrics too seriously, you're going to find those first 4 albums very rewarding. Not that the later Wings stuff isn't, but in a way I think with those first 4 albums he displays an innocence and a charm in his music which is a little bit lacking towards the second half of the decade. You could almost say he lost his innocence after this album, because Band on the Run was a great album, but it's a little bit slick and I wouldn't say corporate, but playing to the market, and some of those songs of that album have been played to death, like Jet, for example. Whereas this album remains pretty much undiscovered. You've got a little braille message here on the back. "We love you, Stevie," addressed to Stevie Wonder. You've got a message for the Wings Fun Club on the bottom there. And you've got a nice booklet. Mine's come apart, unfortunately, but some quite interesting pictures. I'm not going to open it up because it will fall apart. I just want to show you this bit. This has the Wings band here, and this is signed by Henry McCulloch in the middle there, who's the Wings guitarist from this period, who I met in the 90s at a solo gig. And I actually chatted to Henry about his time with Wings, and asked him why he left and what he thought of Paul. And what I do remember is he said that Paul is about the nicest bloke you could ever hope to meet, which was very nice to hear. He wasn't too complimentary about Denny Lane. Anyway, I've gone on way too much about the background, and let's get on to the tracks. So we start off with Big Barn Bed, which is the opener. It was also the opener in the TV special the same year. On this track, as on a lot of the tracks on this album, Paul's bass playing is central to the song and is pretty upfront. And as a song, it's not much, but as a performance, it's pretty groovy. And I think it's a great album opener. I really like it. Again, lyrics pretty nonsensical, but who cares? The sentiment is genuine, and it's all about same thing as Heart of the Country and that kind of stuff. So then we get the single My Love, a smash #1 hit in the US, and I think top 5 or definitely top 10 in the UK. Again, probably too saccharine for some of you out there. Well, you wouldn't be watching this video if you dislike Paul McCartney, but some of the public would not like this song, My Love, because they say it's too sweet. Horses for Courses. I think it's a great track, great melody, great performance. I don't know that he needed to include the lyrics for this album because, for example, in this track, they're quite repetitive and not too illuminating. But who cares? Don't need great lyrics to make a great song. So that's My Love. The next song, Get on the Right Thing, is we think an outtake from the Ram sessions because Dave Spinoza is playing guitar, and it's not my favourite on the album. It chugs along reasonably sprightly, But the chorus, Linda's vocals in the chorus are a little bit annoying, and it's repetitive, and actually I could see why they left it off Ram. In contrast, One More Kiss, the next track, is Sublime. Paul has come up with a melody worthy of his later Beatle years, and well, some of the best melodies on the McCartney album and Ram as well. It's up there. Whereas Wildlife, melodically, he was struggling a little bit. Here he's rediscovered his touch. One More Kiss, great track. Little Lamb Dragonfly, I think it's another Ram outtake because it's got Hugh McCracken on guitar. And I said I could understand why they left off Get On The Right Thing off Ram, but I can't understand why they left this one off, or if they left it off Ram, why they didn't record it for Wildlife. Instead of which they waited 2 years to re-record some backing vocals with Denny Lane and stuff and put it on here. And musically it's sublime. Lyrically it is a little bit weak, especially the la 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 chorus. But three or four melodies, or 2 or 3 melodies in the song strung together in Paul's best fashion. It's a lost gem. Nobody talks about this track, or very few people talk about this track. Beguiling. Good closer to side 1. Side 2 opens with Single Pigeon, which is a nice simple piano track, and with nice horn section reminiscent of the White Album. But I have one problem with this song. I hate pigeons. When I was living in London commuting to work, I used to get quite annoyed with pigeons, so not too happy that Paul wrote a song about it. And it's not even a country pigeon, it's Single Pigeon Through the Railings. So we're talking about the urban pigeon that we all, or at least I, despise. But it's a good song. Not long enough actually, but no, it's a nice one to play on the piano as well. When the Night is another simple piano song, a little bit repetitive, but a very nice middle 8 melodically, which lifts the song quite a bit. Then we have an instrumental, Loop, First Indian on the Moon, which some people have said they should have left off. By the way, this album was going to be a double album, if you can believe it. And normally I would have said go ahead, make a double versus restrict it to a single. But having seen the proposed track listing of that double album, there's not an abundance of material which they would struggle to leave off to make a single album. I think they made the right decision. A couple of nice Denny Lane tracks, I Would Only Smile, Send Me the Heart, and a couple of live tracks, Best Friend in 1882, and The Mess, and maybe Country Dreamer would have been good, but I think on the whole it works pretty well as a single album. It's more commercial that way, and besides it was getting a bit ridiculous because John had put out Sometime in New York City, which didn't need to be a double. George had already put out All Things Must Pass, which should have been a double, but was a triple. So, you know, if Wings had come out with a double in 73, it would have been a little bit over the top. As it was, he came out with a triple in 1976 with Wings Over America. Another story. So, Loop. Yeah, I love this track, and what I love most about it is Paul's bass playing. They get a great feel on this, with sort of Indian chanting in the background, and then Paul's bass comes in. It's great. Oh, I forgot to mention, when I met Paul in London outside NPL in 1987, I actually handed him a handwritten review of this album. And as I handed it to him, he was going to sign it for me, and I said, no, this is a review for you. And he goes, oh, that's all I need. Presumably because he was expecting another negative review. So Paul tends to be defensive about this period of his solo career, particularly on this album, regarding this album. Very defensive. he said to the writer Tom Doyle, who wrote that book Man in the 70s, or Man on the Run, McCartney in the 70s, he claimed that he couldn't even remember the medley which makes up the second half of side 2 of this album, which we come on to now. And I don't believe, I mean, if Paul's forgotten it, God help us, because then it's just left to a few fans like me to defend it. When he eventually comes to do the archived version of this album, someone should jog his memory and remind him that this album has a lot of merit, and the medley in particular has come in for far too much stick over the years. Okay, so it's not the Abbey Road medley, but then nothing is as good as the Abbey Road medley. It's like the peak of the Beatles' career, more or less. So don't compare it to Polythene Pan, Mean Mr. Mustard, Golden Slumbers, because that's everything's going to fall short compared to that. So we've got 4 nice tracks on the medley, 3 of which are decent, and only Lazy Dynamite is lacking in charm and is a little bit slow and dragging. But Hold Me Tight is great fun, and great intro on the piano, and then the drums come in, and then a little guitar solo, and then the Hands of Love is just 2 minutes of brilliance, utterly charming melody and brilliant harmony singing from Paul and Linda. Again, I seem to remember Linda wrote that this album was such a non-confident record. So you've got basically half the world is against this album, including Paul and Linda. But I'm going to defend it. And Power Cut ends the medley in great style. It's a lovely little tune, and it works well. Okay, maybe the last minute and a half when they're trying to go through the tunes of the medley, maybe that doesn't work too well. But you could tell that Paul's at least thinking about the structure of how to weld the songs together into an album, which was more than he was doing on a couple of the tracks on Ram and Wildlife. He really didn't know how to finish the song, and they kind of meandered on too long. So I think he was on the right track here. His bass playing throughout the album is superb. His melodies are beguiling and wonderful for the most part. The lyrics on here are not his best. I think his best set of lyrics as a solo artist, or in the 70s, were probably on Band on the Run. But if you ask me which album I play more often, this or Band on the Run, it would be Red Rose Speedway. And if you want my mark out of 10, I'm going to be thoroughly subjective like I always am, and I'm going to give it a 9.5 out of 10, because this one is extremely close to my heart, and actually it's in my top 3 or 4 McCartney Wings albums. So, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.